What's up everyone, it's Endymion, and like many of you this weekend, I left my cold cave to venture out into the warmth of society in order to see Across the Spider-Verse. I genuinely thought it was a good movie, although the audio mixing was definitely weird as it was hard to hear what some characters were saying. I also never saw a more pissed off audience reaction to the words "to be continued" in a long time. Seriously, my theater was so angry that the movie just ended like that, but hey, clearly the box office numbers are saying it was the right move. One of the bigger discussions coming out of Spider-Verse wasn't around characters like Miles or Miguel, but instead there's been a growing fascination about Gwen Stacy and how fans believe that Spider-Verse subtly pushes the idea that Gwen might be trans. This is supported in a few ways, from Gwen's room clearly having a "Protect Trans Kid" flag in her room, to her father also having a trans flag pin on his police jacket. And there's also a scene in the film where Gwen and her father confront each other and the colors of the scene transition into blue, white, and pink, which are the colors of the trans flag. All of this apparently has turned Gwen from a strong and likable character overnight to a trans icon. But the question remains, is she trans? I would wager in my honest opinion that she isn't for a few reasons. To start, in case you aren't aware, there's been this ever-growing movement around the ethics of voice acting and how characters must be voiced by people who look like the characters in real life. Which, if you're familiar with my channel at all, you know I believe this concept to be complete nonsense and to be nothing but hollow virtue signaling. There was even a viral clip of someone showing various actors of the Avatar franchise doing a quick voice line as the characters they play. A lot of people got mad when they realized that these oftentimes Asian-centric characters were being voiced by white people mostly. This entire growing debate that you must look or be the thing you voice act as will likely only get worse as time goes on. So you're probably wondering, what does this small rant have to do with Spider-Gwen and her apparently being trans? If we apply the same logic to Spider-Gwen in the same way people these days do with other voice actors, then Gwen being trans would be inherently problematic because her voice actor, Hailee Steinfeld, is not trans. If Gwen was trans, it would have been voiced by a trans actor, otherwise you and I both know these terminally online activists would want to rip Spider-Verse's producers in half for having a non-trans person voice a trans character. The other defense I bring up is simply that Spider-Verse subtly nods to trans viewers with the use of colors to show that the creatives behind it know they exist, and simply saw the scene between Gwen and her father to be an effective way to display trans visibility within the scope of Gwen's story in Spider-Verse. Although her being trans outright I highly doubt, because again, if she was, then Hailee Steinfeld wouldn't voice the character. Unless Spider-Verse's producers pivoted in between the making of films and saw a ripe opportunity in order to pander. This concept of pandering in retrospect is nothing new, of course. We all remember when J.K. Rowling went on a retconning spree with Harry Potter, and started tweeting that certain characters were suddenly completely different than how she originally wrote them. These sorts of reverse pandering tactics are usually only done because of two reasons. The first being that it's easy press and will likely push sites to publish articles supporting them, while the second major reason being that it's simply politically correct to do so. If pushing gender ideology wasn't politically correct, you'd see a lot less of it in today's media. But the fact it is viewed as right-think by the powers that be, that's why it's pushed so much. Companies do this all the time. Look at G4 Tech TV that used to push edgy, oftentimes goofy content because in that era, it was considered funny to be edgy. But if you fast forward to G4's revival, you had people like Frost, who was the antithesis of the golden years of G4, who instead of being funny for funny's sake, decided to ostracize the audience into insane backlash that led to the quick death of G4's revival. Basically, companies in general will pander to whatever the hell is politically correct, even if it means rejecting their own moral codes they used to view as gospel. That's why you have random commercials where things that have nothing to do with gender ideology pandering out of nowhere, like this new Ford commercial. Here, watch.
When you feel like it's over and nothing else matters, I know you feel so divided. Pick yourself up again and you better start walk, girl. Open up your slappy heel, talk, girl. You have come too far to give it up now, even though it seems there's no way out. Take a look in the mirror now, what do you see? You can be anything
What does rainbow flags have to do with Ford trucks? I guess what they're saying is that gay people are tough, but we all know the only reason that commercial exists is to pander in order to up Ford's ESG score. You even have sinking franchises like Overwatch which are pandering so much it's become self-parody. Blizzard recently announced they are actively working to address older characters' identities. This is just corporate speak that Blizzard won't rest until every character in Overwatch has a different gender or identity. All of this is being done simply for ESG reasons in the end, and I honestly believe Overwatch is just Blizzard's scapegoat franchise. So while sexual harassment cases still permeate throughout the company, Blizzard at least has a massive smokescreen where they can pander for eternity while not actually changing their culture. GameSpot spoke to Overwatch's devs, and since it's multiple people being interviewed in this one single part, I'll just refer to all of it as the Overwatch team, and I quote, "For those wondering why now, we love our characters and their lore, and in expanding the Overwatch 2 experience to include the upcoming PvE lore. We realized how much more we can do in exploring our characters' identities and relationships. With our first Overwatch 2 Pride event, we knew that we wanted to celebrate the diversity that makes the world worth fighting for. This is just the beginning of Pride in Overwatch 2. 3 core members of the Overwatch team, senior narrative designer Jen Stacy, senior game producer Brandy Stiles, and game director Aaron Keller doubled down on this sentiment in a group interview with GameSpot and various media outlets, stating that the team will be focusing on every facet of the game's characters moving forward. Stacy then added that players can also look forward to the team re-examining older characters and sharing parts of their personalities and identities that might have gone unnoticed previously. I think it's important that we revisit older characters to show that the heroes that you know and love have more parts to them, and some of these parts might be these identities," Stacy said. But also, as we create new heroes that are connected to the queer community or other communities across the globe, we're thinking about them as a whole person and every facet of them, including their identities. We are moving forward now with a bit of a shift where we would like LGBTQ representation to be not necessarily front and center, but a part of the representation and diversity in the game, Keller said, end quote. As you can see, the push for gender identity is at an all-time high in almost every aspect of our society. Pandering and virtue signaling have become the bread and butter of corporations to act like they care when they really don't. Just look at the Netherlands, where in Rotterdam they tore down historical figures of their history while erecting giant statues of out-of-shape women in track pants. I wish I was kidding. Recently in Rotterdam, Nike has showcased a new statue showing an out-of-shape black woman in track pants looking disinterested. What's the statue supposed to represent? Diversity? Inclusion? Fat acceptance? Maybe all of the above? I don't understand how a statue of a nameless black female in track pants does anything for the people of Netherlands or diversity in general. This would be like going to India and randomly planting a statue of a random white woman in a town square. It's pointless and hilarious as well, since Nike still uses sweatshops to make their clothing. Which means, like every other example in this video, all of this stuff is just pointless virtue signaling. To close out this video, I want to look at 2 other articles, with the first from The Telegraph, which does something also politically correct, which is the erasure of white culture. The article titled, "Anglo-Saxons Aren't Real, Cambridge Tells Students in Effort to Fight Nationalism." The short version of it is that institutions are working tirelessly to rewrite and reset what's perceived as history. They want to showcase statues of overweight nobodies to virtue signal without actually doing anything, and they want to erase concepts like white people because it's politically correct to think that way and it's deemed wrong think by the powers that be. All of this pandering by various companies is simply being done to increase their ESG scores while not having to actually put in any effort. While Gwen is not trans in Spider-Verse, the inclusion of trans visibility was at least to some degree done in a more tasteful way than other media has done in the past. Although if Gwen does indeed end up being trans, then it's simply a rewrite in order to pander because of its political correctness. We're currently living in a time where society is being pushed into a way of thinking that makes them complacent, faceless, and derivative. To be actually outspoken about what you truly believe in should be encouraged, but should also not be problematic if someone debates it as well. We're all welcome to think however we please, but this annoying push that only politically correct ways of thinking is acceptable will never not anger me to no end. The pandering of today's world has gone completely off the deep end into the depths of moronic insanity. What originally was deemed fine is now quickly being replaced by what other groups wish to see, even if the new realities being pushed make little to no sense in any way. This is why Marvel, in their infinite wisdom, panders whenever they can, with one of their more popular characters being the Punisher. But since the skull logo Frank Castle wears on his chest was deemed problematic and was a symbol of right-wing conservatives and police, Marvel decided to not just remove the skull from Punisher, they removed the Punisher from the Marvel Universe. In the recent run called Punisher No More, Frank ends up getting his skull logo redesigned. He renounces using firearms, and even his dead wife Maria comes back to life only to tell Frank she was going to divorce him before she died in the mob attack. As if all of this wasn't bad enough, Frank ultimately disappears from the Marvel Universe altogether and ends up in Weird World, where Marvel right now anyway plans to leave the character to languish for eternity because what the Punisher represents as a character is not politically correct right now. So now, in the finale of this 12-issue series, Marvel has said farewell to the Punisher in every way, meaning they can retire the character and erase him from the mythos of Marvel Comics forever. All of this because the Punisher represents identity politics that woke companies like Marvel don't want to represent. He's straight, white, and a male. He's a firearms expert that police officers use to represent them in the real world. He's also a strong male character that defiantly stands up to his ideals, and Marvel can't have that in today's climate. Things like Punisher being erased is just a drop in the pond when it comes to bending the knee to woke identity politics. It's getting to a point where these companies are willing to remove actual IPs that sell if it means protecting their coveted ESG scores. The Punisher is and always will be one of my favorite Marvel characters because he felt like a real depiction of what a vigilante would actually be like. By removing him entirely, it proves that Marvel and companies like them will move the heavens if it means they can deem themselves as inclusive and diverse. It's all very tiring, but it's the current climate of today, and I genuinely revolt in the existence of this insane way of thinking. But to end this video, I just want to say that if you've watched any of my other stuff before, I implore you like I always do to question everything you see and always look deeper. I know I might sound like a broken record by saying that, but seriously guys, you have to stay vigilant in a world that rewards laziness and complacency. The woke mind virus is creeping from all corners of the world until everything has been subjugated to fit its radical new ways of thinking. Wokeness is a religion designed to dismantle and replace the truth until lies become indistinguishable from reality. So as always, stay vigilant, question everything, and always look deeper. Thank you for watching, like the video to help the channel out, and subscribe for more in the future. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.